risk key to solve is Kentucky 14. Why do we research collect pain injuries? Because colonial ideology believes that scars make your body more interesting. Pain is more compelling than fear. Pain is evidence of authenticity. Academia has been developed to the same palette for pain. Authors interpret the drive to make voice understood sessions that they reveal the frequency of the voice of the research. What makes voice count as in pain. Victim stories are solicited by well-intentioned teachers who argue that there's such a as a powerful authentic voice, unwittingly reduced their students to cardboard typology to fit into their definition of underclass. It is a misconception that simply by building participation to the project, ethical issues of conception of voyeurism or resolve pioneers are always incomplete. There's not about seeking the bright side of hard time space. Framework is not. It's our basic framework is about working in a more dynamic understanding of what comes. What one comes to know. Next on case. First, the role of the judge is to write the ballot. The role of the ballot is to communicate to the taboo. Second, the role of the ballot makes voting African given because it's matched to their one which links to all of our topicality offenses and arbitrary. Next, they'll say that we need to focus on violence here. Let's refuse to talk about international issues. Imperialists. Cohen 14. We are witnessing it. Imperialism. The same people who are first trying to pledge their alliance to endangered minorities say silently with constant criticism on American crimes because the U.S. citizen he can do something about American policy, but nothing of the crimes of others. You consider the isolationist you can convey by the literal phrase that they're trying to say someone else. His arguments something equivalent of the right wing believes it's the poor world when you relevant for victims of atrocities. Someone else you rule out the ideas of solidarity. When solidarity goes, all kinds of connotations become possible. The vast murder can be forgotten. Indifference always supposed to brutality to endorsement that Western left is interested only in the West and cannot even think about the atrocities someone else is not enough for the stranger is a victim of oppression. They must be a victim of the rights for oppression and no rights for calling in place black people are aggressive in the combat that's wrong and justifies anti-black violence. Play 16 words might be as well be race words. The dangerous implication that means that that state of race relations now American law maybe rectified by violence. This isn't true. The World War, the word war used to describe what's happening in unpredictable, unsafe ramifications. Black people asking not to be shot for existing is not a war. Black people something to protest their senseless killing is not war. War implies opposing sides. War implies that separate aggressors come to close with only one reign supreme. To use that word is inside violence. Attack shall be used as justification to condemn back people for speaking out against police brutality. That is nothing to kill the ones who really demons them. And race relations are high now. Statistical data proves Rayleigh 12. Race relations have never been better. But war incidents are quite rare. So in serious interracial crime, the media sensationalist fixation has grown steadily in recent years. It is possible to see does not see this media coverage as a factor of contributing this malice. Right-wing media can take the centralizing virtually every prominent story on black and white crime. The ultimate imitates the black and white crime archetype is something to we have an epidemic of white. It's something to ask: do we have an epidemic of white and black crimes or an epidemic of brutish black and white crimes? The answer is neither. Statistics so thoroughly refute remarking that Americans should take the media to task. The divisive falsehoods of reality they present. The reality is far from the race war fantasies of extremists on either side. The absolute absence of Americans indicate that roughly 85% of murders are interracial. The big picture of interracial or ethnic conflict broadly is surprisingly positive when there's no current race war or indeed the general epidemic of interracial violence. Vote neck on presumption. There's actually militant persuasion fails. One, don't solve violence or individualization. It's true that race was inevitable. Their model doesn't mean that perpetuating racial violence find in the form of habitability. And two, lack of explanation they have. Quotes in the 1 explaining what militancy is, but no connection to what makes the race war durable. How is the entry transfer? What does insurgency do? And liberalism is the best ethical platform for emancipatory change and racial oppression. Is a product of contingent equalities and distribution of power rather than an inevitable consequence for enlightenment thought. They abandon essential resources for creating an egalitarian future. Mill 17. Liberalism shall be contemptuously rejected by radicals by a retreat for radical agenda to build a broad democratic movement is a chance to plutocracy. Patriarchy and white supremacy in the United States movement is unlikely to be successful if it appeals to principles. What Americans already endorse progressives should try to retrieve liberalism for a radical democratic agenda rather than rejecting it. The initial question should always be why ask why people are making generalizations about liberalism. What kind of variety of liberalism do you need? Are your generations really true about the possible kinds of liberalism? Liberalism morally subset the liberals versus universals affirming the morality of human species and moralist and subordination of coordinability and improvability of all social institutions and political arrangements. Cut the next two. Article on a few more things on the floor. On the roll of the ballot. One, this unfair. There's no way for the neck to win. Two, this gives the judge the right to adjudicate what's good for black people. It's obviously devices them. Three, it causes movements to fall apart by causing schisms. On Brady 12, this is obviously isn't true because we see African Americans in communication roles in debate. On Glitzy 12, Glitzy 17, this isn't true because clinical literature is recognized in debate. And then on Wilderson, there is the end of civil society movement mean extinction. That's the suffering. The total suffering outweighs any possible liberation. That's 7 minutes. Cross X.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm deeply confused. First, let me clarify a couple arguments. You on your last few arguments, you say on Brady, black organizations and debate disprove. What's your next argument?
Sorry. Can you repeat the question?
What's the second to last argument in the one and C?
You mean the idea that there's no all to the world, like extinction outweighs?
Okay, where did you make an extinction impact?
Oh no, what I'm saying is that the end of civil society, as you advocate it, would likely mean extinction of civil society, extinction of humans, and so and so that would outweigh um, the
That's
impacts of the.
Let's talk about Blaze 16. You say that there's no race, the rhetoric of race war is bad because it paints black people as the aggressors. Where in the 1AC do we say the term race war?
What we're saying is that the way that the AC is like prescribed, in essence, helps, like as you said in cross, it's to like advocate for a form of black militancy, which suggests there would be a race war undergone.
Let's talk about the race relations are high now. So you're really 20 evidence. What date is it from?
Really 20.
What?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I do not have the exact
That's
date from
fine. That's
2020.
fine. So coronavirus is a develop. It seems to me that coronavirus is kind of like a development that proves that thesis. Seems to me that the world is pretty anti-black because like the entirety of New Orleans is pretty much screwed by coronavirus. Why is that the case?
Yeah. And also just to clarify, Rally 20, I believe, is from the February issue of the Commentary magazine. Um, so what we're seeing here is that, like, again, race relations are high now, and so like to your point about coronavirus, right? Uh, what we're seeing is that even if like certain areas are hit even harder, that that just proves to you that we have more places where like we should be trying to reform in a sense the civil society, because for
Why?
example like
To prove why civil society is redeemable, and this isn't in the 1 and C. But let's talk about the second off. The second off.
Mhm.
So pain narratives. Why are pain narratives bad?
Yeah, so the idea here is that like pain narratives pretty much feed into a settler colonialist viewpoint of the world, in which pain kind of authenticates certain stories, and by doing so, it kind of perpetuates like the settler colonialism. And
Okay, I'm
yeah,
missing the internal link for why talking about a black person dying means that we're settler colonialists.
yeah. So like the idea is that in the actual like description of the suffering and the description of the pain, that leads to subtle colonial ideology, as the card says, "quote Scars make your body more interesting." So it leans into that ideology, and
Okay,
that's 3 minutes.
okay, I'm starting to. Why are we imperialists?
Yeah. So the argument there is, like as you said in cross-ex, we're focusing on violence in the Americas, and that's the link.
Okay, it's more explanation of how that's imperialist.
Sorry.
Could you explain more on how that's imperialist?
Yeah. So like the idea here is that like by focusing only on the violence that occurs in the Americas, it pretty much means that we're foregoing violence that's occurring elsewhere in the world. So we're pretty much classifying, as the card says, like what the right type of repression is, right? So like we're saying that like if you are meeting these certain standards that the one AC sets out, then we are going to try to act on that violence. However, for the rest of the world, where there's all this other racism and violence going on, we're going to totally forego it. And the card kind of delves deeper into that.
Warren and Mills.
You said Mills?
Yeah.
The liberalism, yeah. So the idea, the warrant here is that if we can repurpose the liberalist tendency for a radical like democratic agenda. So like as it talks about like liberalism is like universalist, and so it's trying to affirm the moral unity of all the human species, and so all the races. And then it talks about how it tries to improve all social institutions and political arrangements. So it tries to improve all of these numerous.
Cease. I have 140 remaining. Case. First off, second off.
Is there a document, Josh, or no?
No.
Okay.
Okay, is everyone ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a better explanation of how history works and how the world works, so you should scan the wilderness intent evidence. The internal warrant within it was conceded. It would have been more profitable for Europeans to take white slaves, but the liberal economy structures psyches in the New World to turn black bodies into enslaved flesh, while white and white violence is kept in check. Only our theory of power explains this. It's in Chico. Why does the U.S. maintain the financially damaging but black prison industrial complex? It explicitly answers the topicality debate, because if we win our ontology claim, we win our theory of communication, and they have no defense on that. The only shot to solve the impacts of the app is black terrorism. Weaponizing blackness steals away from white habitat and destroys the world order, since blackness would cease to operate as a signifier that is fetishized by whiteness. The line behind you say the rule about is that the app should be matched against the links to topicality. The app always wins, but we will impact turn that on topicality. There's no reason for why that matters. The Cohen 14 Evans, who is the he that they're talking about? He's obviously talking about like alt-right people, not black people talking about black people in domestic affairs. We are not imperialists. Talking about black people is not imperialist, but rather talking about specific violence within the United States. You say race war is bad, but we don't say that term in the affirmative, which means that there's fundamentally no link. Also, we impact turn this by saying that black terrorism is the only solution for black bodies. The really 20 evidence. Coronavirus is definitely a development that disproves this argument. It proves that the world is anti-black. New Orleans is screwed over, and a bunch of other black communities are screwed over because of the structure of civil society. This just talks about crime, but it doesn't talk about any other political situations. You say vote negative presumption. We do solve violence. You can see the solvency within the affirmative card in the Gillespie evidence. You say no explanation. We did explain it in the extensions. You say Mills, but on the Mills 17 evidence, liberalism is bad. Ontology proves that this is the case. Those agendas can only be repurposed by being anti-black. For example, there's a reason why child slavery only reproduces itself to the present, to Jim Crow and the prison industrial complex. The rule about arguments. You say no way for the neg to win. It doesn't matter. You say you consider our theory of power, which takes out the rest of your arguments. It doesn't cause schisms because all black people are beautiful is the adequacy of the affirmative. You say now prefer our theory of communication over their argument for why there are black organizations that are in debate. It doesn't matter. The alternative to the world is not extinction, but rather viewing blackness as beautiful tea. The next question of the tea debate is whether debate should exist, but first debate is anti-blackness. In Gillespie 17, the logic of slavery and the communicative spirit seen in the slave trade. Blackness was not seen as part of the future to pioneer, but to serve the future. Slaves not profit from the cognitive pit, but rather is used to fund the continuations of society. Turns the form of procedural fairness to preserve the anti-black structure that is debate. Their apathy and skills and past collapse educations they teach us to be useful. Their turns educations they teach us. There's a structure very to the utility of education for blackness and the communicative spirit. Second, I don't need to justify a counter-interp. Competing interp says that we should find the best model debate, but debate should not exist at all. Third, the TBA and switch side debate is obvious for me. It proves that I could have been fair and chose not to, so this violation is more egregious and unfair. Fourth, I get to weigh the case. I'm not leveraging my advocacy, which is what T is criticizing, but only a warrant. They need to prove why the warrants are unfair. The only reason you couldn't engage was because the advocacy I presented traditionally, the line blind. You say iterative testing is good. However, what has iterative testing done for black people? It always, all these ideologies filtered to anti-blackness. That's the reason why Trump is president. You say assumes the ability of fairness, but no, we're prescribing goodness to unfairness and changing the obligation to judge to hack black. The pick. The net benefit to the pick is terminally not unique. Insofar as we're winning ontology, there's no reason for why the net benefit is necessarily not unique. Violence, yes, violence will happen to black people when they're highlighted, but that's obviously not unique and will be inevitable. We talk now. The second argument is that we just talked about black people suffering. There's no internal link for why this is settler colonialist. Third argument is that the impact turn it's good. It exposes the parasitic nature of blackness. If we win that black terrorism argument, the thesis of our affirmative that means that you cannot vote on this argument because it proves that our injection in this space is necessarily good. Also, picks are bad because it hinders liberation. It hinders liberation for black bodies because it means you're stealing black labor. That's anti-black.
I'll use the rest of my prep. I used 140 last week, so I have 320 remaining, I believe.
Yeah.
Can I use?
You have a question?
Yeah. Did you put anything down on my ballot?
What?
Did you anything to my roll of the ballot?
We can use yours. We can use yours, but yeah, sure. We can use yours. It doesn't really matter.
that's time, but the order is going to be on T. Actually, it's going to be on the yeah, it'll be on T, the pick, and then on case. Is anybody not ready? Okay, let's start. All right, Judge. So first off, looking on T, the one key mistake that the AF makes in this round is that they concede our roll the judge and roll the ballot. So you're able to extend these through. You might have these on the case flow, and so the roll the judge is to write the ballot, and the roll of the ballot is to communicate decisions to tab room because it totally conceded. So you're gonna have to use this. This goes totally conceded. So we outweigh on link strength. Their role the judge, their role ballot. If the role of the judge is to write the ballot and their form of debate is a debate, there's no debate, that means that in their model of debate, since there's no debate, there will be no ballots. That renders the role of the judge useless, and that renders the role because there will be no ballot. And so, insofar as they concede the role of the judge, you have to cross-apply that lens when looking at the theory debate and the topicality debate, and you see that the model of debate that they try to tell you is good is actually implausible. And so that means that you're going to be having to vote neg here on T. On the line, extend limits. This is going to be key here because this is extend limits. This is key because specifically the word here that neg prep is about topical plans as point of offense. That means that any other topical plan favors the affirmative. That's key because A, it obviously hurts. It obviously skews fairness, but also B, this means that since negative preparation is skewed about is structured around topical, that means that the next able to engage with affirmatives that are topical. So that means an affirmative that would talk about a black critical literature, but would be topical, would be better engaged with the neg. And that would cause more clash and more critical thinking and more education about critical theory and about the best way to win their impacts. And so, as we see here, the limits is also on grounds. This is key because the XRT app and the non-T app explode the utopian fiat, so they can just shift out of anything in the 1AR. This kills our ability to age and turn staff because we never learn about the advocacy. And so this is also key because we see that since the affirmative is non-topical, the negative is unable to engage with the affirmative, and that causes again less clash, less real education coming out of this. And so this is going to outweigh on the voters. They say that like they're talking about like goodness outweighs fairness. However, you have to look at the fact that debate is a competitive activity. Debate must be fair. My opponent makes these arguments. They are assuming that the judge will be a fair debater. My opponent also concedes the role of the judge is to write the ballot. The ballot in and of itself must be fair. And also on education. Education is key because education controls the internal link to their ideas of goodness, their ideas of liberation and black terrorism. Because we need to be educated about these alternatives for them to become plausible in the real world. And so since we help education the most, that's another reason you're going to be voting neg. On iterative testing, they say that iterative testing hasn't done anything. But the problem here is that we aren't doing enough iterative testing. We aren't doing enough iterative testing about critical literature, and that's the reason why we haven't seen anything come out of it. The affirmative totally avoids doing this iterative testing. If you do the iterative testing, we will see more. We will see more good come out regarding critical literature. For example, look at like the actual topic. Since we have iterative testing, we've seen plans. The actual topic about nukes increase in their viability. Similarly, plans about black literature and black terrorism would improve in their viability and would lead to a better net good if we had these things. So also they can see that the topicality is nowhere beyond the debaters. So that's going to be the highest layer on your ballot. That's going to be the highest layer on your flow, and that should be a neg. Next, let's go on to the pick. On the pick. Okay, let's go on to the pick. On the pick, they say that the ontological claims outweigh. However, this isn't true. You have to look to the fact that the pick pretty much the pick notes how like this the pick notes how like the narratives of pain in a sense contribute as like a prerequisite to its ontological claim because to be seen in the world you have to have these you have to in this other colonial world you have to have these scars to be considered then they talk about how there's no internal link for white's bad and they turn it. However, there is an internal link for white's bad and white's colonialist. We specifically show you that subtle colonial ideology believes that scars make your body more interesting. Their evidence relies on the painting of black suffering to go through with these things. So on that, you're able to extend the pick. The pick here is key because even the pick has a risk of offense. That should be enough to outweigh insofar as they don't show that the pick is actually insofar as they don't show that the pig is actually a bad thing, a risk of offense that we avoid settler colonialist ideology is enough for you to vote neg. The only real way they can get out of this is through their term that it's good to expose black violence. However, this simply isn't true because we still show that there's suffering going on, but we don't read the narratives of pain, and so we can accomplish both things at the same time. Then real quickly, let's go on case. A few things real quick on the roll of the ballot. They can see that it's like if there's no way for the neg to win. That's key because that means that it further links them into the abuse story of the theory shell. Then let's go on to they talk about how Chico 11 shows that is like kind of like a prerequisite topicality of theory of communication. However, if my opponent is within the debate space, and so their argument about how the debate space should be abolished completely defeats their advocacy because they would have no medium to have this advocacy be accomplished. And so you're going to be pretty much what's going to happen at the end of the debate, Judge, is that you're going to see the pick solves their offense coming out of the AR better because we avoid settler colonialist ideology, and at the top we solve topicality better, and that's going to be the biggest voter in this round. It's a drop the debater issue.
Starting 140. Okay. Case pick T.
I'm all good.
I'm ready.
Hold on for a second. Okay, everyone's good. I have a better explanation of how history works and how the world works. Our theory of power was conceded. It would have been more profitable for Europeans to take white slaves, but the liberal counter-structure psychics and knew what to turn black bodies into and stuff. Well, white and white violence is counter-check. The theory of power concession out of the two in R makes it impossible for you to vote for them. The only shot to solve the impacts of the Afro-Black terrorism, which means the pick solves 0% of the case, will be more of that on the pick page. The weaponized blackness steals away from white hyper and destroys the world order. Says blackness ceases to operate as a signifier that is fetishized by whiteness. The line behind this page, you say we link to abuse, no impact of fair unfairness is bad. You say we are within debate, but the debate space. This is new in the 2R, but I'll respond to it anyway. If I'm a terrorist within debate, that was the entire point of the one. That was the entire point of the 1AC. You haven't been listening at all. The black terrorism, it ruptures the symbolic, but that'll be more on the T page. The pick. There's no internal. There's no. The overview argument is that there's no internal link. There's no warrant for why talking about black people means settler colonial. It's settler colonialism. You make an argument, but it's like a non-argument. There's no warrant for why. You just say there is an internal link because settler colonialism leaves scars. But no, that's not a reason for why talking about black people leads to settler colonialism. The second argument I'm going for is this impact term. Your argument. I'm going for the argument that your argument that the pick solves the entirety of the case, but the injection of black images of suffering is the affirmative. So the pick is just the AF without the AF at worst, so it's 0% of the case. So we impact turn this notion by a notion of narratives of pain being bad because it's parasitic on blackness. The last argument that I'm going to go for is that picks are bad. You can see that picks are bad because they hinder liberation, because they're stealing black labor. That's at the worst. At the end of the debate, you should vote on that because if you're confused, because it's a voter that they've conceded. T. Debate is an extension of the project of slavery. Your ballot will be a refusal to invest into the anti-black structure that is debate. Black communities are always considered worthless because blackness seems an instrument to serve the future rather than to create the future because the simple sides of investments for black suffering crossed by the Wilder Centennial Building Economy extension. This means that communication is not a level playing field for black bodies. Impact turns things like the topical version of the affirmative because the affirmative does not want to be in debate. The affirmative wants to charitably rupture debate. That as long as I win this argument, even if there were nitpicky technical issues, I've turn the form that every single one of their arguments presupposes. I've turn every single dialogue argument and their attempt to engage in debate at all. The next question is debate worth preserving? We have one that our black terrorism and injection of black terrorism within the debate space is a good thing, and so they lose. The line blind of this page. You say that writing the ballot means that their model debate is bad, but no, we say that we win automatically because fairness is bad. You say limits, but we have impact turn engagement and education within debate. There's no warrant for why critical thinking has a net benefit for blackness. Now, your last argument is that education controls the internal link, but no, education doesn't control the internal link because we said that education it has no utility for blackness in an anti-black communicator spirit. You say debate is a competitive activity. No, we re-prescribe value within debate for judges to vote for unfairness within debate. That my purported notion of black terrorism. Yeah, debate's bad. Iterative testing and limits are obviously bad from that. It follows. Pretty clear.
All right, y'all. So this was a really good debate. Good job to both of you. I ended up voting AF, so I can explain. There are a couple reasons for this, and I think the biggest sort of top level issue with the sort of strategy on the negatives behalf is that I think a lot of the work being done in the 2NR is not conceptual enough, in the sense that much of what the AF is disagreeing with on T is not any of the standards or violation level arguments, but rather like the sort of overarching assumption that things like fairness and education are valuable or like good. And I think the lack of 2NR sort of clash on that issue makes it way too easy for the 2AR to sort of do what he did and just kind of like sort of box everything together and say like, well, I've impact turned all of it. And I can get into like the details of what that means. So I think yeah, ultimately, I agree that the AF won their method of Black terrorism is a productive like method for liberation, or at least a good frame for analyzing like the world and the violence that occurs. I think the role of the ballot debate is something that's like kind of lost here, because I think the negative like could have gotten more out of this role of the ballot sort of debate than they did, because in the 1NC it seemed like you were making an argument for why like the judge should. Well, I think your initial disagreement was that the round is not taken hostage and that it should just be like a fair debate between both of you. But I think that you need to be doing more work to bring the debate back onto your terms, and not just say that it's a question of like voting AF or neg like it normally is, but rather like what types of impacts matter, right? And like what types of conversations are important under that framework, and do that in a way that actually favors the strategies that you're going for. And I think absent that, it was sort of too tailored for the affirmatives types of arguments that it just made it too easy for him. Another thing is that I think like on T in particular, I think that the biggest like sort of constructive criticism I would give for the neg is you should have gone really hard for the topical version of the AF, because that's something that like wasn't really addressed much by the 1ER, and could have been a potential weakness in the AF strategy, which is that like if you go for this argument that says that like the AF's methodology is compatible with defending the topic and having the type of engagement that the neg says we should have, then it functionally non-uniques all of their offense, at least theoretically, right? And that gives you a huge strategic leg up, right? Because at the absent the going for the TVA, it's way too easy for the 2AR to concede almost everything you're saying and disagree only on whether or not the impact of fairness and education are good or bad. Once we've established that they're bad, then all of the 2NR extension of offense seems to be like an argument for the AF and not the neg, which was pointed out by the AF. And so I think the way to hedge against that and to prevent that strategy from happening is by going hard for this topical version of the AF argument in the 2NR, and that would have definitely made it easier. That being said, there's also conceded offense on the pick as well for the AF. So there's this like impact turn to like pain narratives, and there's also a picks bad argument. Both of these were like implicated in terms of the role of the ballot about anti-blackness. So I feel like these are somewhat relevant pieces of offense, even if there's some question on topicality as to which way the debate would be going. I think this could be a tiebreaker. So I think I end up feeling pretty confident that I can vote AF just on the like strength of offense back to the role of the ballot. Do either of you guys have any questions or anything you want to talk about?
Were speaks good?
Yeah, speaks were good. I appreciate you going slower. I think that more people should I haven't judged you before, so maybe that's just what you normally do, but especially in these debates, it's going to be really, really important. So yeah. Oh, one more thing that I thought was really good is that at the top of your speech, you would say, I've done this. And like, that's something that's really helpful, because I think more people should begin their speeches by explaining in like super simple terms like why they should win, and that just like made it very clear throughout the 1AR and 2AR like what is the point of this debate. It's to explain anti-blackness somehow, and the AF did a good job of that. So yeah, I think that was really good. And the negative, I think, also executed like a good strategy. I think it's more a question of sort of taking a step back and understanding like what was the AF trying to do all along, and how do you try to get that debate started on your terms earlier than later. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What do
Cool.
you think the 2NR should have done differently then?
So I guess the biggest thing was just go for the TVA, right? I think it's probably like okay that you didn't collapse to one layer. Right? I think that wasn't like the thing that made it hard. I think the thing that made it hard was just like your argument choice, right? So on topicality, I would spend less time going for like the limits argument and spend more time explaining why there exists a topical version of the app that solves his offense, and therefore there's a lesser burden on you at that point, because suddenly you just have to prove a risk that there's like some other benefit that can be achieved. And then on top of that, the work that you need to be doing as well is explaining like why are fairness and education like intrinsically valuable in the context of Blackness as well, right? And because you read them as voters, but then we both conceded the role of the ballot about Black violence, and so that contextualization needs to happen in the 2NR as well. And it might sound something like fairness, is like an ethical principle that should be defended in all instances for the sake of preventing violence, or something like that, right? That like fair treatment of people is like a concept that we should care about, and if we start to throw it out in certain instances, then we justify throwing it out in any instance, which would also justify anti-Blackness. Something like that in the 2NR would have made a lot of sense, because then it's like, oh, okay, like maybe fairness isn't that bad, or maybe debate isn't that bad. Another place you could press back on is just like, and this kind of got mentioned, but like not nearly in a lot of detail, which was like the question of if debate is bad, like can participating in debate be good? And like Josh kind of just like avoids this question by saying like, well, I'm the terrorist in the activity and that's my methodology. But I think there's some real question as to like, is there a contradiction there? Like, is there tension between his claim about debate and his advocacy within debate? And if the 2NR had sat on that, it would have made the 2AR a lot less persuasive, because I'm not sold on the claim that debate is bad, and then if that's the case, then I have to go back and look at a lot of topicality issues that I didn't have to in this case. Because if I just agree that debate is bad, well then, yeah, then he has way more offense than you do, but that's not an easy assumption to win. And so if you had pressed back on that more, then, maybe things would go differently in terms of the line by line. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Good job, guys. Good luck with the rest of the tournament.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks.